Call, please.
My apologies.
Okay, will we start over?
Yes.
I'm going to call the Springfield Economic Development Agency meeting for September 22nd, 2025 to order with roll call, please.
Board Member Van Gordon. Here. Board Member Weber.
Here.
Board Member Moe.
Here.
Chair Rodley.
Here.
Vice Chair Blackwell.
Here.
Board Member Stout.
Here.
And Board Member Lovell.
Here.
Thank you. There is one time designated for public testimony this evening under business from the audience. If you are attending in person, please complete the request to speak card located at the front of the council chambers and turn them into the city recorder. If you are joining us online with a tablet, smartphone, or computer and wish to speak during business from the audience, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. The order of public testimony is as follows. First, anyone in person in the council chambers, and second, anyone who has raised their virtual hand. And we are going to move on to the consent calendar.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Can we have a vote, please?
Yes. Board Member Van Gordon. Yes. Board Member Weber.
Yes.
Board Member Moe.
Yes.
Chair Rodley.
Yes.
Vice Chair Blackwell.
Yes.
Board Member Stout.
Yes.
And Board Member Lovell.
Yes.
Thank you. Next item, please.
Next item is business from the audience.
And I do not have any cards. Do you have any hands raised?
We have one hand raised. And that is Mike Quavala. And Mike, you should be able to unmute your microphone.
Thank you. My testimonies as such, I was really surprised to hear that the city's ready to allow the parking lot south of City Hall to be removed for apartments. And I think that would further allow the lot under City Hall to be used for staging and storage for that construction. And also probably be closures to sidewalks, bike lanes, and travel lanes, and most of the City Hall street trees down in that area. It would remove parking for cars and bikes for the museum, the Emerald Art Center, City Hall, the library, Wildish Theater, a number of restaurants in the area, and a whole lot of businesses. It would really affect these businesses, and those City Hall lot is also some of the few area lots that offer real convenience for City Hall and some of the amenities there, and parking for disabled and elderly people. There's a lot of areas in town to build apartments, better places. There's vacant lots on 5th Street from the south side of A to B Street. There's SEDA-owned properties all over downtown, including the Blue Mackenzie and other SEDA lots in Glenwood and downtown. And Island Park Professional Center is ripe for redevelopment. And South A, if you go south side of South A, east of 5th Street, that's completely open and cleared. And there's many, many buildings in poor condition downtown with vacancies and marginal uses that could be redeveloped. So in conclusion, I would say that the parking area down there, free downtown parking with all that close to that many businesses and City Hall and all those amenities like the Wildish, it makes downtown Springfield very special. To damage that and to remove that, I think is really short-sighted. So please don't develop that parking lot that is being used. It's between the museum and the Emerald Art Center, because it serves all of downtown, and it's really an important thing to have down there. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more hands?
Appears we have no other hands for this item.
Okay, thank you. Next item, please.
Any report from the chair?
No report from the chair.
Then your next item would be new business, 437 Main Street Vision and Alley Campus here for this item.
Good evening, SEDA Chair, Vice Chair, and Board. Ally Camp, Economic Development Manager. Tonight, we are here to discuss high-level input on your acquisition at 437 Main Street and considerations for next steps. We purchased this property about a year ago now. The intent of the purchase was for a redevelopment opportunity to take a one-story building on a whole city lot and reimagine it as something more dense and that has a stronger impact on the property tax base. I want to take a couple minutes before your discussion tonight to walk through our downtown urban renewal plan, since you all identified this site as a priority project back in February at your retreat. I just want to remind you of the plan that dictates how we use our tax increment financing for a project like this. And your board briefing memorandum highlights the most relevant sections of the plan for your consideration too. The downtown urban renewal plan exists to direct the use of tax increment financing. Spending of tax increment financing must align with the plan purpose, goals, and outcomes. Springfield's plan was adopted back in 2007, and it was written broadly to encompass a lot of future opportunities. This plan has become an example for other communities looking to build a new urban renewal plan. Tax increment financing is one of our strongest tools for two reasons. It's a financing tool to assist with new and redevelopment for outcomes that the board is after, and new and redevelopment have an impact on the tax base in the future. This is a tool for us to assist projects and a tool for fiscal growth and stability. A little bit about the plan's purpose. Technically, the plan is in place to drive the use of how we spend TIF. TIF must be used on the purpose of the plan, and the purpose of the plan is to treat causes of blight and serve to revitalize businesses. Your board briefing memorandum also addresses specific goals and outcomes that are related to the site and your intent of redevelopment. And just a couple other things before I wrap up. Investments of TIF are different than private sector investments. This is to treat causes of blight, revitalize businesses, and support Springfield's economic future. This money is meant to be spent to make strategic investments in downtown to bring good things that will better position the tax base in the future. That might not look the same as a private sector return on investment. The board holds different considerations and different values for the projects that you move forward under this plan. Also in your board briefing memorandum is site and zoning information for your conversation tonight. The site is zoned mixed-use commercial, which is very flexible. And there's a brief summary of a past SEDA meeting discussion about your development values way back from April of 2023. So tonight I'm asking for a high-level discussion from the board on the following: your vision for the site, your vision for any process for the site, and any thoughts you have on role of the board. I've included some SEDA questions in your AIS that I'm happy to walk the board through if it's helpful for your discussion, or I'm happy to just let you all talk and take notes as well. I will hand it back over to the chair.
Okay, let's see if anybody wants to jump in or if we need your questions. Anybody have things they want to jump in and share? This is the US Bank property, just. All right, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Ally. I guess I have a question when I read through this and you're asking for what kind of process. When I came on, the Blue McKinsey project was no longer viable. So I wasn't there previous to see what kind of process we used during that time. And when I look at this property, it's such a prime piece of real estate right in our downtown. It's large. And, so being newer, I guess, at this, I'm just curious as to what the process was with that before. What our past practice was.
And I might look to my peers because that was before my time with the city too. I believe that many developers were solicited for a potential project. That project was unique because it was a three-way partnership with the landowner, the developer, and SEDA. So a little bit different than this situation. That development team came to SEDA directly.
Other questions or follow-up questions? Board Member Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. I think it's good to have some of the questions, so let's maybe put that in the back pocket. But also too, I think the primeness of this property is what's going to make or break, in my opinion, what the future of Springfield looks like. So I think there could be some methodical kinds of procedures that we go through, i.e. maybe we have a visionary process, or we have an idea board, where a work session where we have a work session where we just say, what do you think is really missing in downtown Springfield over the future, and what could be potentially an addition to that. One thing that comes to mind is we just heard someone make some comments about the limited parking that's down there. As we know, the project that looks to be what might be developed in the parking lot outside of our doors here is a very great project done by the Obi Corporation. So I think it's something that we should still lean into. But having that concern about parking, perhaps maybe one of our visions on that block would be something similar to what's at Oakway Mall, the Hyatt Hotel Complex building, where there's retail spaces on the bottom. There's a floor or two of parking in that would help some of that parking alleviation, and residences or a hotel on the top. I think that in the future, the demands of our Big Ten participation, the University of Oregon, and just the proximity of keeping people in the downtown core to experience the downtown and to experience the retail spaces and the stuff in the restaurants that we have down here, I think a hotel is a decent idea to lean into. The process of that, I'm not sure, Ally, if there's like a municipal publication of sorts, or a website where we could solicit maybe an ad to say, hey, Springfield downtown's looking for the next 80 years of Springfield's future. We would make the best deal available to a developer that would come in and talk to us and give us some ideas of things to chew on. So I don't know if that's a possibility we could do, but I think that's worthy of having a discussion from some outside folks, because as we're seeing, I think the market is changing a little bit to be a little bit more favorable to develop. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Blackwell.
I appreciate Board Member Lovall's comment about the hotel. I feel like I brought that up myself a few times. When I look at that lot, the size of it, I can envision some type of boutique hotel that brings people into Springfield to go to the restaurants and the Wildish and everything that's around. And then, also there's employment factor and transient tax too.
Great. Board Member Weber.
So on the point of vision, when I think about the US Bank building being in the kind of the center of our downtown, but also the center of the properties that we own to this side and this side of it, I think of this more holistically. And I do like the idea of a hotel or something that would be kind of an anchor to all of that development, right? Something that just kind of ties it all together. And I think a hotel could do that, but I think it's part of a bigger conversation as to where we're going to take those other properties to.
Thanks. Board Member Van Gordon.
I would be open to a hotel there. So I'll make a couple comments and then maybe make then I have a question. I think the question that I have is really around what actually works there. And we're in a very challenging economic environment. And I think when I think about how we go forward in a way that moves that project so that it is kind of a cornerstone or a capstone or a legacy project for this city, I don't, like, a hotel could work, but I don't want to close ourselves off to something else that could potentially work there. The second question, I guess, that I have is really thinking about how it touches all those corners, and if we're not thoughtful about it, right? There's an opportunity really to open up the entrance from downtown going back down to Booth Kelly, because realistically it's within the realm of like that we want to see more development down in Booth Kelly, and we want to, we may end up with a parking garage down there someday. I don't know, but I think understanding how the entrance from Fifth goes down there is really important to me, and then vice versa. However, the corner that's complementing where the Kesey mural is, and it is really important as well. And I think lastly, I think the question is from your perspective, what would be the best tool to solicit as many, ideas as possible? Because if we just put an advertisement in the paper, they're going to come in drips and drabs, right? And then we won't have a way to sort of evaluate it. And again, I'm fine and I'm open to having a conversation about visioning and what our ideas are there to make that happen. But I think given the centrality of this property, we don't want to just wait for them to come to us, but instead have some sort of thoughtful way where we're at least choosing who we're going to partner with.
Board Member Stout.
Thank you. I love the ideas that my fellow board members have for the long term of the property. I think those are good intuitions. I'm more interested in sort of this near term, and I'm wondering if there's something we can do more incrementally and more immediately rather than just a parking lot. Can that building be filled with month-to-month leases of something hyper creative? And that's not because that location needs to be that thing forever, but that it needs to show an investment with the community. I'm thinking something as wild as, an extension of the block party. Okay, can that occupy that space and bring a little bit more heart and strength and welcome? We can move the chairs around a little bit within the downtown core as things get developed. But I think if there's a way that we can possibly have this kind of managed creativity where the SEDA board's not involved the day-to-day of what's happening down there, but when somebody is ready to finally make a position, it's not just an empty block that we've been waiting for 10 years to develop. It's something that has been an active part of our heartbeat in a complex organization. That's, I think, my real desire for the space is what can we just do simple and easy immediately there? Is it possible to have a farmer's market there? Is it possible to have some kind of startup business there? I remember when the public house was just still Sprout. I thought that was a very intriguing use of that space. So I don't know, I would just start to think along those lines of what can be done more immediately, because I think that will actually be the lever that gets us to the long-term use. Thank you.
Okay, do you have other questions that were in your CEDAR questions that we haven't touched on that you would really like to ask us?
Sure, if you don't mind. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback on vision and the tidbits on process. I mostly asked the process questions since you all are familiar with the process that we went through for the memorial building. So if you have thoughts on comparison points from that, that would be helpful at this point in time. Board Member Van Gordon brought a good point up in terms of what would be feasible there or viable. That's where we get into that discussion about the role of the board. The more specificity that the board approaches this process with an outcome, the higher degree of role I anticipate you all needing to play to make it happen. So I think I'll just put that out there to see if it sparks any conversation. And the board had a very large role in the Blue McKenzie process. Rightfully so, that was going to be the board's kind of landmark investment in downtown to spur future redevelopment. Are you seeing the board's role in this site as one of similar scale or a different scale?
Do you have opinions? Board Member Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. I see the CEDA board at least having a viable stamp on this. I mean, the Blue McKenzie project is an entirely different animal than what this is. It's closer to downtown. The Blue McKenzie project was a real pie in the sky kind of development, whereas this is going to be more methodical, as Board Member Stout had said. The what's the thought of us just saying, hey, we put this out to a couple of large hoteliers and say, we have this property, is anybody interested? Just to spark a conversation. Board Member Van Gordon said that we'd get some trickle stuff, but that's what it takes to start the ball rolling, is a few ideas, which identifies another direction, which identifies another contact. So I don't believe that's wasted time. I think that's creatively spent time that would get us down a narrowingness of the ideas that would allow us some decision making in it.
Other thoughts? Board Member Van Gordon.
I think what I think about what I value here is trying to find a way that is forward and productive, right? And I'm less And that means, from my perspective, about being a little bit more flexible with how we approach the development community. I don't like, so if there's some sort of medium somewhere between not a little bit more hands-on than hands-off, right? But trying to get ourselves in a situation where whoever we're partnering with, they're driving a majority of the work here, because I think that is the difference between us being successful and, and is finding a partner that's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting here. From a process perspective, right? Like, what when we've gone out and we've sort of shopped things without sort of consistent deadlines and consistent deliverables, my opinion is that just sort of trickle, like that sort of just extends the timeline. And in the past, when we've done that for other locations, I felt like we've not got all the information that we need to, or we've had a hard time finding that right person to work with. So I would be in favor of, if we were going to shop this around, is to do it in some sort of, hey, we're looking for this information. If you're interested, here's an actual deadline, and let's get all the information together so we can figure out a way forward.
Did you want to go? Go ahead.
What is a reasonable deadline for something like this, a project this large? I guess that is my question. What if other cities, or, I mean, what's a reasonable deadline for something? To me, this is probably would be maybe one of the bigger projects we've seen, right? So I guess not having any context of what's a reasonable time frame is kind of a tough one.
I think I want to take an opportunity to bring up our newest staff member, Sienna Fitzpatrick. Sienna has started doing some preliminary research on how other communities have approached properties like this. Sienna, not to put you on the spot, but if you have any information to share with Councilor Blackwell's question, thank you.
Yeah. Hello, board. Great to meet you all. Sorry it took me so long to make it to a meeting, but glad to be here. To your question, board member, were you asking about the development of the actual building or the process of finding a partner?
I think the process of finding a partner, but maybe both. When we ask, like, make a process and put dates on it, I'm just kind of, shooting an arrow in the dark, saying, okay, let's have an answer in 6 months. I don't know what's reasonable, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. That was actually exactly some of what I was looking into. The unfortunate answer is that it varies. There's kind of different approaches. What I was looking into specifically was, does an RFP request for proposals, kind of going straight to like, show us your mock-up of what a building could be and, give us your ideas, or a request for qualifications, show us that you've done something like this before, and then let's talk about design. Those were kind of the two different directions I was looking into. And a lot of communities that I've spoken to around Oregon, I talked to at least 4 different communities and looked into other projects around. They've really kind of customized it to their needs. From my perspective, RFQs tend to be a little bit more flexible. You get time to build a relationship with different interested parties. There's an opportunity to kind of put out some information as the community that's interested in, has a property for sale. And then building that relationship versus the, RFP is like, we want to see something happen on a faster scale. Some communities, in one example, Hillsborough, they had a RFQ process. Their entire timeline for, the start to finish, that was about 4.5 months. That did not succeed, unfortunately, and they went back to the drawing board. Their process was looking for, if I recall correctly, a pretty specific building had a specific vision in mind for what would go into the property that they were looking at. And then they went back, kind of built a relationship with some of the folks that they had talked to in that initial process. And 5 years later, in 2022, they had a 3-month process and successfully have implemented that initial vision. So I guess you could say that took 5 years. So I think it really, the RFP process from my perspective, does offer like a little bit more You can shorten that. You can ask for less from the developer to get more people in the room, so to speak, and build some of those relationships, answer some of those questions, figure out what may not work. And then if things have not panned out the way you might have hoped, you haven't spent, 6, 8, 10 months on that process. But if that's the preference of you really want to see what this vision is from a developer, the RFP also makes sense in that situation.
Did that answer your question? Other questions? Comments? All right.
And how should we think about this building with the many other things that we have in the fire as a SEDA board right now? So what's the trade-off? Or, can we potentially engage more broadly across several projects at the same time?
Having Sienna on staff gives us the capacity to have dedicated folks on this project. This was identified as a priority from the board, so we do have interest in moving it along at the speed that you see fit.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. I'm like, I got an opinion, but I'm going to wait. All right. City manager.
I looked at the wrong elected official. I was staring down the mayor. SEDA Board Chair, I was thinking that, there's a distinction when you're engaging in an RFP versus an RFQ. I was also looking over at Commissioner Lovell, seeing if I was reading his mind. So in this instance, I don't know necessarily if this is the time to decide the mechanism for that, but I would issue a caveat on RFPs. If you do decide to do that, yes, you can yield much more information and get a more fleshed out design. However, it also has more risk as far as that is conveying a message of our intent to construct that particular project, and also the enormous amount of work that goes into producing an RFP from these companies. So just something to consider. I know that when we were looking at other instances, I was thinking about Glenwood would be a good example when that was when the SEDA board initiated a request for qualifications process and brought our current development team on. So there's a lot of ways that you can do that. And given that there's not a very specific thing that you want to see somebody bring and deliver to you, I just want to keep that in mind as you deliberate further.
Thank you. And did you have something you wanted to jump in? Okay, thank you. Because Nancy touched on what I was going to say. Because if memory serves, we did do the RFQ process with Glenwood, and I think part of that process gets us to what you were talking about in terms of building that relationship, and then we have a little bit of a say, but not too much say, and we have the trust in the team that's going to go forward and do the work. And I think that we had some tensions before we chose that for Glenwood, but it has worked really well. And so that's my opinion, is that starting with an RFQ would be good. The other thing that I wanted to add, which no one else has mentioned, and everybody can throw a shoe at me and think this is a terrible idea, but I think that there's an opportunity to have some work with the public in this, and to maybe do some public relations and some sort of public visioning around it. Doesn't mean that that's necessarily where we're going to go, but I would love to start to build that momentum and that interest, and have folks, because now people are like, what are they going to do with that? What happened to that US Bank building? But it would be kind of cool to, I've been in communities where they put up like a big chalkboard, or they do some sort of an event where they let people come out and help with the vision. And maybe if that was happening simultaneously with us doing an RFQ, we might be able to like really generate some public interest in that, and have people see that as buy into our vision as that being part of the future of Springfield. Other thoughts or comments, or does anybody want to throw a shoe at me? Go ahead, Board Member Lovell.
Thank you, Chair. No, my shoes are too hard to get off, so you got rescued from that. But that was, I want to add on to that idea. One time when we embarked on a project and really didn't know where we were going with the project, we had an architect lunch. where we phoned all the 20 architects in town and said, hey, we're doing this big lunch and we're doing this project. What do you think of X, Y, or Z? And that was really, really helpful to have all of those minds in a room just saying, well, you know, Springfield's done this and done that. Second thing is maybe this project is too premature to bite off this much and chew like crazy. Maybe we have other properties, like I'm thinking of 138 Main, the Brown building. I'm also thinking of, you know, a couple of the lots that are around the Springfield Buick lots. I mean, there's other things, the Memorial Building. Maybe we chip away at some of these and get some momentum and some slots filled, and then we can refine our ideas about really what's be needed at this US Bank lot. So I think there's a tension here. I feel sometimes is that we have all these properties and we have to do something, and we're doing also Glenwood, and then oh my gosh, we have this big block in downtown and we need to do something. And sometimes we get so scattered, really don't know what we're doing, and maybe a more systematic, methodical approach going from small to large might be something to consider at this point.
Other comments, or do you have more questions that you want us to think about? Are you getting direction or confusion?
No, this is helpful direction. Would you mind if I just summarized what I've heard tonight? Okay, thank you. I've heard a lot of board members speak to the use of a hotel or something that brings people to downtown. I'm guessing you mean visitors when you say that. I'm hearing that this property serves as an anchor for a lot of SEDA's other considerations for downtown. I'm hearing that feasibility, economic feasibility is important, and the way it interacts with the properties it touches. Casting a wide net could be beneficial. That net might be relationship-based or project-based, maybe to be determined. Making sure that we're focused on a process that's forward and productive, and that SEDA allows the experts in the room to provide their expertise in how to proceed. And look to the work that we've been able to achieve with the Glenwood RFQ process. Find a way to build momentum and interest, potentially with working with the public. Have I missed any key points in this discussion?
Board Member Lovell?
I'd like to add a possibility if I could. I know we haven't talked about this at all, but if we're looking at this block, it's going to be a serious infrastructure improvement for the Springfield Utility Board, water, power, and all that. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't bring them into the discussion early as possible partner. If not, then all of the development of infrastructure and all that will fall on the developer, and it may outprice something that we could make an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement with, or some sort of partnership with Springfield Utility Board. Just a thought.
Thanks for that. Other comments? Anything else that you might need?
This is helpful. I was thinking that a potential next step would be for staff to draft up thoughts on a process, bring it back to the board for feedback. Anything that you would like to see in that process? I hear some focus on overall time frame.
Board Member Lovell?
Thank you again. Sorry to monopolize the conversation. I'm almost curious too, is sometimes it's really hard for us to envision what we can do because of the separate buckets of money that we keep talking about, that they can't coexist like oil and vinegar, you know, oil and water. And I'm wondering if what might be helpful if there's funding that's out there or things that has been held or buckets of money that we could say, okay, if we pause on, I'm not suggesting this, mind you, if we pause on Glenwood with this money, we could do this to this money, which would then in a year or two make this money to pour back into Glenwood. I mean, the money trail is a little complex. So I think that would be maybe something that, you know, if we, I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking getting a big room with a white board and having Home Depot buckets with labels on it. And could that pour into that one? Could that, you know, I don't know, just thought. Throw a shoe at me, Chair. Go ahead.
Oh, and if I can just add, Glenwood money is completely separate from downtown money. So we are operating with separate buckets. They're intentionally kept separate. There's different plan language, which drives their uses. So those buckets are not swappable.
Right. Having known that, that's really good also if we're going to engage the public for them to understand that clearly as well.
That's helpful. Anything else? Any other questions or comments? Welcome, Sienna. We're happy to have you for doing all of that research. And I really appreciate the discussion, everybody. Thank you for bringing your ideas and thoughts to this. What's next?
Sure, Ali, before you move on, just something else that might be helpful. The SEDA board has participated in the construction of 3 hotels in Glenwood. It might be good to look back at that process because the SEDA board did work with the developer and kind of step away once the project was moving forward, but we did do our stormwater and wastewater pieces as well. So it might be good to revisit that as well.
Thanks for that. It's helpful that Neil is the historian of the Springfield City Hall. All right, anything else? Then this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.